Hello everybody, welcome back. So this video is going to be an attempt at organizing my ideas, like to create a presentation rather than a rant about consciousness. So I throughout my videos, there's like I hit the main points, but I don't have any video where I'd have them all together. So I'm going to try that now. The first major point about the problem of consciousness is that scientists in mainstream science, they all agree on a massive assumption. And that assumption is that the world is materialistic. It's the materialistic paradigm, right? It's the mechanical universe, which says that the matter is what's real and that the universe is not conscious. Nothing in the universe is conscious. Matter is not conscious. Particles aren't conscious. Plants are not conscious. And yet somehow we have consciousness. But we don't understand how that can be through this perspective. The perspective of materialism and the assumption that the brain is generating consciousness, that consciousness emerges from matter, is the main stumbling block to our understanding of consciousness and why neuroscientists can't seem to figure it out. Like, they are trying to show how the brain generates consciousness when in fact the brain does not generate consciousness. It's that they're working upon the assumption of the tradition, the old paradigm of science, which is that the matter is fundamental to reality. And so consciousness, what I propose, and I'm not the only one, I always name these guys, but Rupert Sheldrake, Bruce Lipton, and Stuart Hameroff, along with Sir Roger Penrose, they all have theories: morphogenetic field theory, the biology of belief, and or theory of consciousness, which propose scientific models for how the consciousness, which can be thought of as informed energy or aware energy. And if you don't like the word awareness, then you can think of it as a feedback. It's not even just energy, it's fields, right? So fields of energy that somehow engage in feedback, and they're able to make adjustments to the way that they organize the particles and molecules into complex structures. It's very complex organization that is required to arrive at living cells. And in order to do that, it just can't be random. But science sort of operates under the assumption that it was random. And I propose, and I'm not the only one, that there's some kind of feedback and organizing element or intelligence or awareness. And that awareness is consciousness. It's the orchestrating principle behind everything that exists. Everything that is emerges from consciousness and is embedded with consciousness, and it's literally in the space-time fabric of existence of the universe. The actual continuum of space-time is resonating, it's alive with this consciousness. That's the only way I believe that if we don't come to agree on that, if the scientific community doesn't agree on that, they're never going to understand consciousness, and we're going to continue to live in a world where you have a duality between what scientists are observing and what people are actually experiencing. Because so many people experience things that lead them to believe that there's more than just matter and more than just physical realities, right? We have hunches, we have intuition. We can feel it when somebody's staring at us and then we turn around and bam, he's right there where we thought he would be, or she, you know. We can think of somebody right before they call us. We can think of a goal, and somehow, if we believe in that goal, things will come, like synchronicities will come into play that we just can't explain through a mechanistic universe, like a dead universe that functions through mechanistic processes and no consciousness or intelligence at all, right? And then those people who have enough of those experiences, or they kind of like wake up to the spiritual realm of things, the spiritual side of things, and then those people are forever in opposition to the scientific minded people who are very left brain logic. I need to measure it, and I need to, okay, so I'm getting sidetracked. But the point is that this seeming duality between the spiritual, which, quantum physics points to so many things that are so similar. And then you have the spiritual / quantum physics / intuitive right side of the brain. And you have the classical science / left side of the brain, logic, analytical, empirical based observations. But these are just two sides of the same phenomena, right? There's only one reality. So what these guys are experiencing and what these guys are observing must be the same thing, and we're just interpreting it in such different way that it's just limiting our ability to evolve. Because I believe that once we understand that consciousness is not generated by the brain, it's not a subjective. I mean, there is a subjective mind. So here I can explain but to finish that thought, once we understand that it's not generated by our brain, then we can move beyond the illusion of separation, of like, I'm over here and you're over there, and like everything beyond my skin is separate from me. And therefore I can basically act as if you don't exist and be very self-centered and create a whole world of thinking that is very conflicting and destructive. So then what's really going on with consciousness? It's the subjective experience of consciousness, which we call our minds. We have a subjective mind, which is the subjective mind is sort of produced by the brain. It's generated, but the way it does it is it doesn't generate consciousness. It picks up consciousness like a signal and filters it down through its programming, through computations, and through the programming of your mindset beliefs, which actually beliefs and thoughts create specific neural networks to wire together and fire together. And that's like the programming, similar to the programming on your iPhone versus like an Android phone. It's gonna give you a slightly different display of the same information that's coming in through the Wi-Fi signal. So we're all tapped into the same source of consciousness, right? There's only one source of consciousness, of creation, and that consciousness is infinite potential and probability. And we filter that down, and our brains process, based on our programming, that invisible signal of informed energy into an image of reality that our mind produces around us, like a hologram, the same way that your phone or your television set is receiving a signal of informed frequencies that travel through the air invisibly, and then the software in the phone or the hardware in the TV produce an image out of that. Based on however it's configured, then you're gonna have a slightly different image. And when it comes from a subjective mind, everybody has their own subjective version of reality, which their mind is generating. And so the brain is taking on this informed energy signal, processing it into a subjective image of reality, and then broadcasting that through a frequency that interacts with the quantum reality of subatomic particles that are still in a state of pure potential until the observer interacts with it. Until my subjective mind interacts with the quantum field, like it's completely pure energy and pure potential. But once my mind connects, collides, interacts with, it's like passing a frequency through a plate of sand and watching a structure form, which is called cymatics. And you can do that with water. You can send a sound, like a specific sound, which generates a specific frequency, and it'll produce a specific structure, like a geometric structure, out of like, just water that's sitting there or randomly scattered sand. All of a sudden, it'll shape itself when it's exposed to this frequency. The same way, our brains generate they broadcast, they receive consciousness, process it, and broadcast it out and produce a holographic sort of reality of a subjective experience, a subjective reality. And then we perceive that, and there's a feedback. We perceive the image that we've projected, we perceive it, and then we make beliefs and interpretations, which generally create a feedback loop of reaffirming what we already believed. Because we believed so, then our image turned out a certain way, and then we look at that image and say, you see, that's exactly how I believed it was. And then we strengthen that belief, and then it just keeps going back and forth, and it becomes more and more solid into a more and more solid state of reality. But when we are in a state of deep meditation, it's almost like there's no world. When the mind ceases to act, the mental activity subsides enough, there's no more time and space and them and that, like they all sort of disappear. You don't no longer experience that. Even though you're awake and you're aware and you're conscious, it ceases to be. And 20 minutes can feel like an hour, or an hour can feel like 10 minutes when you're in these states of deep meditation. Because it's the mental activity that's generating this image, this holographic image of reality. And the programming is constantly being reaffirmed. So when you're either deep meditation, you can start to change your beliefs and change the programming, which is usually in the subconscious mind, and then start to see a different version of reality. When the one who looks changes, the stuff that he looks at changes. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? I think that's Wayne Dyer. Also, like through psychedelics, people are able to break through from old paradigms because they get, it's like it amplifies the system so much. Your brain is producing a torus field, and your heart is producing a electromagnetic field, and I think that those together, it's what's generating this image. But when you eat psychedelics or you do extreme fasting or meditating, you're amplifying the system so that the antenna, the field, is able to reach, shake itself free, expand beyond its limited programming, and therefore allow for a new image of reality, a new version of reality, like a higher dimension. Sometimes they call it like if you're in a higher frequency, then you're tuning into a higher version. So that's kind of what it is. Like, comes down to the brain and the body are like tuning forks, and they're tuning into specific frequencies of consciousness and then processing and projecting that into an image. And if you can tune into something higher, if you tune into thoughts of love and gratitude and compassion, it gives you a more harmonic image of reality. And that's how I think this whole thing is working. The brain is more of an antenna for consciousness rather than a producer or generator of consciousness, because consciousness is just already there, like the iCloud. It's just like in the air. So much love to everybody. Any feedback is welcomed, and I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe, like, or share. Thank you.